For most of human history, we assumed that animals did not feel anything. Not really. They behaved, they reacted, they survived. But feel in the way you feel, in the way that makes a moment matter, that was ours alone. Science said so. And for a long time, we were comfortable with that. Then the evidence started coming in, and it did not stop. Welcome back to Backyard Bird Mind. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe because what you are about to hear will permanently change the way you look at every bird that visits your yard. In 2012, a group of the world's leading neuroscientists signed a document called the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness. It was not a theory. It was not a hypothesis. It was a formal scientific consensus statement signed by researchers from the most respected institutions on Earth, declaring that non-human animals, including all birds, possess the neurological substrates that generate conscious experience. In plain language, birds are conscious. They have subjective experience. What happens to them matters to them. This was not a fringe position. This was the scientific mainstream catching up to what careful observers had been noticing for decades. And once you understand what that means, the birds in your yard are never the same again. Let us start with fear because it is the easiest to see and the hardest to dismiss. When a chickadee on your feeder hears the alarm call and freezes, something is happening inside that bird that is not just mechanical. Researchers at the University of California studied the neurochemistry of fear responses in songbirds and found that the same stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, that flood your body when you are frightened, flood the bird's body in exactly the same proportions relative to body size, the same chemicals, the same cascade. The brain structures that generate the fear response in mammals have direct functional equivalents in the aven brain. When that chickadee freezes, it is not executing a program. It is afraid. The experience of fear, the way it feels from the inside, appears to be one of the oldest and most conserved experiences in vertebrate life. Birds do not have a fear response that mimics yours. You have a fear response that evolved from the same ancient system that birds still carry. The fear in that small bird on your feeder is older than mammals. It is older than trees. Now, here is one that researchers resisted for decades because it felt too close to anthropomorphism. Joy, play, the experience of doing something for no reason except that it feels good. Ravens and crows have been documented sliding down snowy rooftops repeatedly, not foraging, not fleeing, not performing any survival function, just sliding, going back to the top, sliding again. Researchers at the University of Vermont observed this behavior in wild crows for extended periods and concluded that there was no adaptive explanation that fit the data. The birds were playing, and if they were playing, they were experiencing something that made playing worth doing, something that felt from the inside like it was worth doing again. Young chickies engage in aerial acrobatics that serve no foraging or escape purpose. Swallows will catch a feather in midair, drop it, dive for it, catch it again for minutes at a time. These are not malfunctions. These are animals experiencing something that functions like delight, and the brain structures that generate that experience, the dopamine, ergic reward pathways that make play feel good, are present in birds in forms that are structurally homologous to yours. If you are starting to see the birds in your yard differently, take a moment to subscribe and share this with someone who feeds birds. They need to hear what science has found. Here's the one that changed the conversation in laboratories around the world. Grief. When a pair-bonded bird loses its mate, the behavioral changes that follow are not simply the disruption of a routine. They are prolonged. They are specific, and they mirror what we know about grief in mammals with startling precision. Male cardinals who lose a female mate will continue singing her contact calls for days. Not territorial songs, not alarm calls, but the specific soft chips that the pair use to locate each other. There is no functional explanation for this. The mate is gone. The call will not find her. Researchers at Ohio State University studying pair bond disruption in songbirds documented elevated stress hormones persisting for weeks after mate loss, reduced feeding, reduced activity, and changes in vocalizations that had no adaptive function in the absence of a partner. The bird is not confused. It is not running a broken program. It is experiencing something that functions like loss, something that changes how it moves through the world, how it eats, how it sounds, because something that mattered is gone. And the thing that mattered was not just a resource, it was a relationship. Now, here is something subtler and perhaps more important for what it means about your yard. Specifically, researchers studying corvids, crows, and jays, and later extending their work to songbirds, have documented something they call anticipatory emotion. Birds do not just respond to what is happening now, they experience something about what is coming. A crow that has learned your feeding schedule will show physiological signs of anticipation, elevated activity, directed attention, specific vocalizations before you appear, before the food is visible, before any sensory cue has reached it. The anticipation itself generates an internal state. And that state, the experience of looking forward to something, is one of the defining features of conscious emotional life. Your bird is not waiting for food. It is looking forward to you. The distinction matters more than it might seem. Before we get to the last piece of research, I want to tell you about something that happened in a laboratory at Cambridge University that permanently changed how scientists think about bird minds. Researchers were studying western scrub jays, a corvid related to blue jays, and they discovered that these birds have what is called episodic-like memory. Not just memory of facts, not just this place has food, but memory of specific events, what happened, where it happened, when it happened. The jay remembers that it cached a particular piece of food in a particular location on a particular occasion, and it uses that specific memory to make decisions later. It is the kind of memory that in humans we associate with autobiographical experience, the memory of lived moments, not just learned patterns. And subsequent research has extended this finding across multiple bird species, including corvids and some songbirds. Your birds are not living in an eternal present responding only to what is in front of them right now. They carry a past. They remember specific experiences, and those experiences, positive and negative, safe and dangerous, rewarding and painful, shape how they approach the world going forward. The bird that has had good experiences in your yard does not just know your yard is safe. It remembers being safe there. It carries that memory the way you carry the memory of a place where you felt at home. There is also something that researchers have only recently begun to take seriously as an emotion in its own right, rather than just a behavioral trait. Curiosity. Birds, particularly corvids and chickees, will approach novel objects in their environment. Not because they are looking for food, not because the object represents a threat to assess, but because something about it draws them. They explore it. They examine it from different angles. They return to it repeatedly. Researchers at the University of Exeter found that this exploratory behavior in birds is driven by a neurochemical state that is functionally identical to what curiosity feels like in mammals. A state of motivated engagement with the unknown that feels from the inside like wanting to know. A chickadee that tilts its head at something new in your yard is not running a threat assessment protocol. It is curious. It finds the world interesting. And a creature that finds the world interesting is a creature that has something to lose if the world stops being safe enough to explore. There is one more piece of research that I want you to sit with. Scientists studying the emotional lives of birds have found that birds experience what researchers call emotional contagion. They pick up the emotional states of the birds around them. A calm flock becomes calmer. An anxious flock becomes more anxious. But the research that stopped people in their tracks was this. Birds also pick up emotional states from the humans in their environment. A study published in the journal Applied Animal Behavior Science found that birds in the presence of calm, predictable, gentle humans showed measurably lower stress hormone levels than birds in the presence of unpredictable or agitated humans. Even when the human behavior was identical in terms of actions taken, the birds were reading something beyond behavior. They were responding to something about the quality of the human presence. Your state of mind when you stand at your window or step into your yard is not invisible to the birds around you. It lands on them, and they respond to it the way they would respond to the emotional state of any member of their flock. Think about what all of this means for the birds in your yard. The cardinal that comes to your feeder is not a beautiful automaton. It has fear. It has something that functions like joy. It forms bonds that, when broken, leaves something that looks unmistakably like grief. It looks forward to things. It picks up your emotional state and responds to it. It has, in the language of the Cambridge Declaration, subjective experience, which means that what happens to it matters to it, and what happens around it matters to it too. And you are part of what happens around it every single day. You are not just a food source. You are a presence in the emotional landscape of a conscious creature, and every time you step into your yard, calm, consistent, gentle, you are not just feeding birds, you are contributing to the quality of their experience. You are part of what makes their world feel safe or unsafe, known or unknown, worth staying in or worth fleeing from. That is not a small thing. That is everything. So the next time a bird lands near you and stays, not because it has to, not because there is nowhere else to go, but because it chose to, understand what that means. Now, it is not instinct. It is not programming. It is a conscious creature with an emotional life that science can no longer dismiss, making a choice about where it feels safe. And it chose your yard. It chose you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever watched a bird in your yard and felt like it was feeling something? What did you see? I read every single one. And if this changed the way you think about the birds outside your window, share it with someone who deserves to see them differently. I will see you in the next one.